Hey guys, it's Troy again, and a little while ago I had the opportunity to buy an entire lot of pens, and antiquedigger.com was giving me and some other people who buy from him normally the opportunity to pick out from a huge lot of pens that he probably wasn't going to end up restoring and selling, and if there was anything that really appealed to us. So I picked up a bunch of them. We talked, we communicated, I said, this is what I want. So he put them all together, gave me a price, and I bought a bunch of them. I've already worked on several of them, and this is one that I did just today. This is a pen for which, kind of a sucker for these. One of my all-time favorite brands of pen is Sheaffer, but more so vintage Sheaffer. This particular pen here is almost 100 years old, and I absolutely love Sheaffer flat tops from the 1920s and up into the early 30s, and this happens to be one of them. And you can see that Sheaffer white dot that was very emblematic for Sheaffer. And this particular pen probably came out in anywhere between 1924 to 1928, and perhaps these two thin bands here were introduced towards the end of the run, and depending upon the source, they stopped making this in 1928, although some sources have shown up through 1934. One of the best sources for information on Sheaffer pens is a guy who's not far from where I am, but he owns penhero.com. And Jim has been a great source of information for me over the years. And he has a page on this. This is the Sheaffer Jade Senior. And he puts circa 1924 through about 1934 for production. He said that 1924 was a banner year for Sheaffer, in that Sheaffer became the first pen company to mass-produce plastic pens, giving the cellulose nitrate plastic developed by DuPont the trade name Radite. Radite pens were initially made in black, in an entirely new color for them, jade green, and I love me some jade green. This one has a little bit of discoloration from the years, but like I said, the pen's almost 100 years old, and I would expect a little bit of discoloration, but this one wasn't so bad. So I said this was worth the investment for me. It's not perfect. I actually have another jade celluloid that looks much better, much brighter than this one, and it's in the picture where I've got a lot of other Sheaffer flat tops, and I've probably already put that up by now. All right, so but this particular Sheaffer, the jade green, they would later produce models in coral, and I showed some coral models in that Radite by 1928 in black and white marble and very rare blue. Sheaffer led the industry into the production of all plastic pens, and soon Parker, Conklin, and others followed suit. 1924 was the year of the enduring white dot trademark that was introduced. So they appeared on the top of the pen cap. This particular one is indeed the Jade Senior. They're about 5¼ inches long, and when they're capped, all right, which is what this is, and I measured it, and it's actually just a hair over 5¼ inches long. I wanted to make sure this was indeed the Jade Senior. And when I was looking over the pictures on Pen Hero, it's identical in terms of the two narrow bands here. The imprint, and the imprint's not fantastic on this particular pen. You can see it, but I got a closer picture of it there. And you've got the typical old, very thin Sheaffer lever there. Flat end on the bottom there. And it is a twist to open. And it is a Sheaffer lifetime nib. I've got a much better picture of that to show you as well. In a section that kind of, a shorter section that does flare out just a little bit. I put a brand new sack inside of it a little while ago. I pulled it apart, cleaned it up. I was able to get the nib and the section out pretty easily. And that nib was a little grungy, but I polished it up nice. Yeah, it's been in ink, so you can see that doesn't look quite as shiny, only because I put some ink on it, but I had it shined up really nicely and cleaned up, and it actually flows ink fairly nicely. And actually, the sack that was in it was still pliable. and it would work because I could squeeze it and I could actually hear air being expelled and sucked in. But I said, I don't know how old that sack is. I'll just go ahead and replace it. So I did. And that nib, it actually, out of that section, I could actually flush it fairly well with water. But when I looked at that nib, I said, it's a little grungy. I just want to pull it apart and clean it up. So I did. The other thing too is you'll see right there a very nice imprint on a clip that says Sheaffer's. So, man, I love Sheaffer flat tops. I've just got a thing for them. And that's why I've got several of them in my collection. And I absolutely love writing with the ones that I've got. So, what I'm going to do is, let me just go ahead and write with it here. And, I mean, I'm not going to do like a full review of them because I've done some Sheaffer flat top videos here previously and some pen mails. But I will show you, how it puts together. So you've got over a 6-inch pen for sure right there, like 6 3/4 inch at least. I didn't whip out my, my measuring stick or my calipers and check, but that's a good long throw on that. So I'm going to take that off. It's still just long enough for me to be able to write with it. So what did I put in for some ink? I got some Waterman, because typically Waterman inks are very pH safe for vintage pens, but I put in a harmonious green because it's got, jade. So I figured, what the heck, let's go ahead and with that. So let's go ahead and put nib to paper. This one actually seems like more of a broad, almost broad when you go to write with it. And I was kind of surprised at how wet and how broad this one wrote. So a Sheaffer. This is a senior in jade, or as they called it, a Jade Senior. This is actually a fairly wet writer. It's fairly smooth as well. I did not have to do any nib work. I cleaned it up, I flossed the tines, everything looked good, put it back together, and when I first inked it up, I was like, that writes great. I don't have to touch it. I don't have to smooth it. I don't have to do anything to it. It actually wrote fairly well, fairly smooth. And you can really see how wet that writes because you can see the shine on that ink when it hits the paper. But very impressed with how it writes. Like I said, I enjoy Sheaffer flat tops. 1920s to me was the heyday. That era, that decade to me was one of the greatest decades for pens for vintage. I know there's some people out there who they're not so much into vintage pens, but if you ever get the chance to pick up a really good, well-maintained and goodly restored old Sheaffer flat top, I think you're really, really going to enjoy it. And I told you I put in some Waterman ink. The Waterman Harmonious, Harmonious green. This nib is actually fairly rigid. I mean, it's almost like a manifold nib in that it's a very stiff nib, but it writes really, really well. This sat in my drawer over here for several months, and I just got the gumption or the motivation to go ahead and finally whip another one out, and because I still got several pens in my drawer. I got 2 more Sheaffers. I've got a nice Wall Eversharp Skyline and a few others I've been really wanting to pull out, and I just didn't really have the motivation to do it until the past couple of days. I've kind of had a wild hair that I want to get out some pens. I want to have something to play with. I want to have something new to write with. I want some new pens. Well, I've already purchased them. All I got to do is restore them and make them like new, which is why I enjoy being able to take an old pen and give it new life. You know, I don't know the history behind this particular pen, but somebody had this particular pen in the 1920s, 1930s, and who knows how long before they went ahead and put it up. One of the things, too, I've been playing with this pen since I put it together, and I've learned that if you want the lever to line up with that clip, and I'm kind of, retentive like that, then you put it together a certain way. You can put it in and twist it, and there you go. So I've been playing with it to make sure when I go to put the lever in, if I want it to line up with that clip. So if you put it in, line up the lever with that clip, it will go ahead and go around one time and it'll actually line up. But I really like the shape. The flat top is a classic design. It's a beautiful pen. Jade, to me, I'm typically not one who likes green. Green is not my color at all. But when it comes to pens, I really like jade. I just absolutely love this cellulose or the celluloid as one of my favorite colors in celluloid. I'm just freaky like that. But I'm enjoying it. So now I got a new pen of the day that I'm going to play with probably all day tomorrow, because as I'm sitting here, it's like 10 o'clock at night. I'll probably produce this and it'll be out like the next day. I won't be doing it tonight. I'm going to go to bed here shortly. But I'm going to go to bed knowing that I've given new life to an old Sheaffer flat top. And I'm just joyful for, yay, another Sheaffer flat top, and one that writes great, and one that writes smoothly. And this will be on my desk, and I'll get a lot of enjoyment out of it. So maybe you get some ideas for your collection. I encourage you to go to penhero.com and check out everything that he has to offer for Sheaffer penography, and read about this particular pen. Also, antiquedigger.com. If you go to his website, you can use my discount code, so you can get a discount on all of your pen purchases over at Antique Digger, which is where I got this. Obviously, this was not for sale on his website. That was through a personal interaction and opportunity, for which I'm very thankful. And if you're one of his customers on a regular basis, just maybe you'll get an instant message someday saying, hey, I got these pens over here. Don't feel like restoring them. Maybe you can get yourself something that you can put together and restore, which is what I did. All right, guys. Hey, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. So new pens, old pens. I'm digging it, man. 1920s. Absolutely love that era.